Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Nadia. I will be moderating this discussion. We are now having the session of Showcase Green Philosophy and Thinking. And I would like to thank all of you for coming and welcome. And also to thank our participants, Adrian, Ege, and Jelena for accepting our invitation. These three participants will present their work and practice in the three different fields of visual art, filmmaking, and theater. And we have some time to present everything, to tell about more about their context of work. First one will be Adrian Uyhazi. She's an independent artist, and she presented her work in numerous museums, galleries, and festivals. And her practice explores interdisciplinary territory between art, science, and technology. And I will give a word to her so she can tell more about her previous and most recent work in this field. So, Adrian, here you go. You can now tell us more. Yeah, just mute. You're muted.
Hello, everyone. Sorry. Thank you, Nadia, for the introduction. And I'm really happy to be a part of this session. And I will start with my visual presentation. It's easier to talk and for you also to see what I'm doing. So just a second to share the screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So basically my visual art practice is based on natural materials, mostly biodegradable materials. And for the beginning, I would like to talk briefly about my past, because I was growing up in a smaller village near Novi Sad at my grandparents' house. And I was really inspired with the relationship between older people and nature. So I was growing up all around the garden, different plants all around me, etc. So for me, it was really interesting to know how nature is developing and how can I implement that moment in my art. So when I studied during the academy, during the bachelor studies actually on the painting department, it was interesting to me to in some way explore the materials, what I can use as a painting tool. So not only on the traditional level, but on a different side of this perspective. In that case, I started to experiment during the studies with different materials, specifically natural materials, what can we buy all around grocery stores, etc. And also I got a lot of materials from my grandparents' places, such as wheat. And it was interesting to me to make an art piece as a painting, which can be also a living artwork, as I can say. So my idea was to have less trash behind me during the practice. So I wanted to have this minimal carbon footprint during my practice. And I decided to follow this direction. And on the beginning, I was searching for this kind of specific material which can replace canvas, for example. So that was my starting point in the visual art field, to explore different biodegradable biomaterials, etc. And the beginning was with this wheat part, as you can see on the side. I wanted to use wheat grass and wheat germ for this kind of living painting moment, when I wanted to make an abstract form which is still living, but I also used liquid plastic, which was also like a contra effect for the natural material and what can happen with it after a while. So after that, I wanted to use another material, which is bioplastic, which is based on cornstarch, potato starch, vinegar, so everything what can we make by in stores, and to cook it in some way. So with much more time, but less trash behind me, it was interesting to explore this kind of field for me. So after a while, I noticed that this wasn't enough in this case, and I started to research what kind of materials do we have more. And after a while, I decided to use SCOBY. So this is the material which is made by fermentation. And the SCOBY is an acronym for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. So for me, it was also interesting the behavior of this specific living material during the cultivation, because it takes a much longer process and time to develop. It depends also of the surface of the thing where I am cultivating. And also the thickness is also important for the material. So basically this SCOBY piece can also be used as paper, leather, what can we imagine? So this can be another biodegradable textile in this case. So I decided to use this kind of material for the canvas, for the base of the art piece. And this is also part of my studio. How does it look like? And I also trying during the process to only use natural recyclable materials, and also for the presentation, which is, I can say, a big challenge, collaborating with galleries also because of the transportation, etc. So it's exciting, but we are still in the process. So I'm really hoping for that in the future we will have more suitable options for these kind of moments, that we will have less carbon footprint. At the beginning, when I decided to use SCOBY, I made these kind of smaller pieces with wood and other recyclable ready-made materials. I used papers, flour, also wheat, and other materials what I found at my grandparents' place, what they didn't use. So this series of miniatures was actually kind of a visual diary for me to explore of the potential of this specific material. How does it behave? How can I store it, etc. And after a while, I also had an exhibition in Belgrade to show for the audience that it can be done in some way, and also for the smaller pieces, it can be more suitable also for the transportation. And also it depends which kind of institution is also involved. On the next part, I also made digital prints, including these processes of my work, because the material is constantly developing. So that was very interesting to me, to have also visual diary, what can I use also for the exhibition, and also I can introduce to people how this material looks like in the process. Also, in some ways, it can be moldy, so that's a big challenge to have specific circumstances for cultivation. And I also forgot something important: how does this material developing actually? So this is made by fermentation, but it's a kombucha. So this SCOBY, it's a kombucha material. What can we use for other purposes? So basically, it's only a fermented tea. Usually, it's black or green tea. So the whole process, it's easy to make, I can say. And on the other side, these photos are also interesting to me, because I use also video documentations, and that part is also included in my artistic practice. So it's not only just the experimental part, the visual part, the production, and the final piece, but also the whole process from the beginning till the end, which I found really important in my practice. And after all, when I made the miniatures, I decided to go on a bigger dimension. And it was suddenly when I wanted to dry my piece, the SCOBY part, on the glass, it stick to it. So I noticed that I didn't have to use any kind of medium or glue or something else to fix it. So I only used glass and SCOBY for my art piece, and it was just literally framed with white wood. After that, you can see also these kind of details when it's still raw. And on the other side, you can see also how does it look like when it's dry. And I made also a series of these light boxes because I wanted to make like 2-in-1 piece. So it can be much more interesting also for the audience to introduce this unusual material in 2 dimensions. Because when you have a light, you can see much more details inside of the painting. Also, you can see different variations. How can the material look like? And another side of my practice is also the presentation part. Every time when it's a solo or a group exhibition, it's really useful to talk about this kind of material, specifically when the audience has all of the ready-made objects, what I'm using in the studio, what I'm using during the process, to be included, and people can see, touch, smell, and to be total in 100% involved in this process. As you can see in the presentation, I mentioned some of the tools what I was using. So those are pigments, tubes, bottles, etc. For example, yes, this was the exhibition in Belgrade, Vivarium, with my colleague Nemanja Milenkovic, and the curator was Katarina Kostandinovic at the Belgrade Youth Center. And after that, during my research, I noticed that I can make other objects from this material, which was really important to me, that I can see the potential of it, how can it develop. And one of the favorite things what I love also privately to wear had accessories. So my first object was to make a bio hat from the same material, which I found really interesting, and it's wearable actually. But this is the first prototype, so it is just used like an object in this case. Also, I would like to mention one of my works, a few stages of creation, the project Overview Effect. Curators are Zoran Eric and Blanca Della Torre. I'm saying hello to Zoran also. He's also a participant today. These are also some details of it. So mostly, shortly said, this was an interesting work to me because you can see the whole process, how was my work developing. So I was composting during the lockdown every material what I was consuming. So because I'm a vegetarian, I was eating legumes, salads, etc. So the leftovers were recycled and composted actually in this small object, and you can see the documented process and the final result. Also the material SCOBY on the next side, and I was using wheatgrass, moss, and SCOBY to make this new artwork, which was also a light box, and a video work, which was also a documentation, not using prints. Another newer project was an installation, May Our Desires Never Fade Away. This was an interesting collaboration between the museum, also with the curators, in my case, because I used the material on the microbiological way. So I was working with my friend Maria Šumarac. She's a sound designer, and mostly all of the experimental moment, what we got, the visual documentations, we use that for video piece, and also we had this specific sound of the documentation. So actually all of the samples what we took from the pool, we made a sound from it, including the SCOBY bacteria and the bacteria also from the pool. And this is the whole setup of the idea. So we have on the center all of the documentations from these samples, also the objects, what were the conservator used during the process, some of the digital prints as a documentation and an artist statement, and the final piece, the sound and the video. Another part of my practice is also a specific project what I started with my good friend and colleague, Maja Halilovic. She's a bio designer and she lives in Sarajevo. So during the lockdown, we decided to develop this platform to educate the public, at least from smaller surroundings, or if people are much more interested, they can be also included in that. And we were promoting this material because she's using the same SCOBY at the same time when I was doing it also. So we met in Belgrade, and it was really interesting to find somebody else who is working with the same material. And we decided to talk about it and also to educate people and how can they use it, or if they have any questions, we are there for it, and so on. And also we had some of these series. We have, I think, 5 or 6 YouTube videos, so you can check it out. The last one is with Bojan Koenig and Ana Todosijevic from Bio2R. And it was really interesting to talk with them from a different perspective, how they see this kind of material, etc. And the last bigger project, what I done with interesting people and good colleagues, was Biofactory. And this was a bigger project which lasted a few months during this year, which was also a promotion of this organic material and also an implementation for the high school students. So how can they use it during the classes, and is there any place for this kind of biodegradable material to be inside of their practice? So if there are textile design or packaging design, or it can be also fine arts. So the perspective is really big for it. So it's on them to decide how can they include this material actually. So we had these workshops and lectures with them, and it was really, we were pleasantly surprised because they didn't know about the material, and they were really happy to know that something like this exists. So they were really interested and included. And after that, we also exhibited their prototypes, what we made at Culture Center Station, actually, Svilara. And also we had this open lecture and talk for the other audience included. And also we had a panel discussion with different figures from culture or art agent, biologist, mycologist, ecologist, etc. And we were basically talking about the potential of this material, how can we implement it in the near future for other projects, other practices, and so on. Also, we had different ecological activities, such as open talks, exhibition, working with kids, and in this kind of activity was involved Zeren Oruç from Turkey. She is a young curator there, and she's mostly working on ecological art. So it was really nice to have her also in Novi Sad and to collaborate with different people. And for the end, also, we invited Maria Kozomora. She's a young eco-designer from Novi Sad, and she was also included in this project to show her pieces, what she does during her practice. And the end of the project was a small presentation of the short documentary film, and we had this catalog promotion, what we done during this almost 9 months. And for the public, so they were also excited to see, to learn, and to ask other questions about the projects and the material. And also we are excited to work on this in the future. So I think that would be, I think I had enough time to talk about the practice. And if somebody has any questions, I'm here to talk about it more. So this was kind of an introduction and a short story of my practice and using biodegradable materials such as Colby. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this inspiring presentation. It was really, really great. So we will have questions time after every presentation. So now please, you can also write it down in chat section, or you can just unmute yourself and ask a question. Okay, maybe someone will, we have a question. Koliko dugo može da se koristi materijal? For those who are not speaking English, how long can you use the material?
Yeah, so it depends for what are you using. So for example, if you are wearing other clothes, so every material doesn't last forever if it's not plastic. So it has a time duration when it's, you know, usable. But that's also a question because we are still working on it to develop the specific prototype that can last much longer as we can imagine in this case. So actually that's still in the process. I cannot precisely answer on that question, but yes, thank you for that question.
Yeah, we have another one. When will it be possible to use it? Regularly, probably.
Yeah, that depends on from a different perspective. So in that case, we need also support, especially Maya is also working at home. I'm working also in my studio. So I'm right now here working parallelly. So we have a smaller space where we are working actually. So it's also based on finances. So if we have a bigger space, better conditions, then we can work on a bigger scale. That's the difference. So I hope we will have that opportunity in the future so we can do something bigger in this case.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you very much for the answers also. And we wish you good luck with your work and wish you to find support and to spread this beautiful idea further. Thank you very much. Now we will jump to the next field we are trying to cover in this conference, that is filmmaking. Here with us, we have Ege Hekman. I don't know if I pronounce it good. Please, if I'm not, then correct me. Ege, is it okay?
It's actually E. I think it
okay.
is, but it's a very Danish name, so you're very forgiven.
Thank you. He is a founder and director of filmmaking production company Produced By, which is actually one of the first companies that were oriented to green production. And he's also a country manager for Green Producers Club in Denmark. And he and his team are hired to help leading TV productions via their green film certification to help them certify their practice. But now I will give my word to you so you can present everything you wanted here.
Great. Let me just see if I can make this screen sharing work. I hope you see a picture now.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. My name is E, and I was the founder with two other partners of this production company Produced By 8 years ago. And we were quite a normal production company from the beginning. We had an idea that we would only produce projects that would do a positive difference for the society. So that was sort of our initiative thought when we created the company. And that worked quite well for us, and we had a lot of fun projects. But then after a couple of years, we started looking at the way we were producing our films about 6 years ago. And we could see that in all our productions, there was quite a big waste, both from what we were eating, and also we had a lot of cars running and diesel generators, and also the scenography behind a production. And we could see that there must be a high CO2 emission on what we did. And therefore, 6 years ago, we sort of tried experimenting with lowering our CO2 footprint on all our productions. And that is sort of our claim to fame in our production company, that we were some of the first who actually started thinking about the CO2 emission, at least in Denmark and maybe also in Scandinavia. And 6 years ago, it was maybe ridiculous a little bit. There was not so many people thinking about it, at least in our industry. I think many had the approach that, oh, do we have to think about our CO2 emission in film production as well? But what we have seen is that there's been a big development within this the last couple of years in our industry. And now it's really attracting a lot of attention that I want to talk to you just later on. But first off, I just want to, I think maybe Vladimir also talked a little bit about this, but for me, this was the big turnaround, or the big reason why I really got interested when I started seeing there was so much data actually showing that we had really big problems with the CO2 emission. And this, I don't know, I hope everyone has seen this now. It's sort of, it shows that within the last 100 years, the temperature has gone up 1.1%. And I just heard from the COP27 that if everything goes as countries promises, then, and that's the best case scenario, when if they all live up to what they've said, the raise in temperature would be 2.6, and that's the very best case scenario. And if the temperature raises 2.6, there's a lot more troubles coming. So I think it's really an important field to start working on. And we do a lot of workshops now in our industry. And I always start by showing this because it's so specific and it's so concrete that you can see you have this temperature, and it's very easy to measure the CO2 emission. Not easy, but it can be measured by scientists now. So we have to do something about that. And we already see the consequences all over the world. Often we get asked when will we start seeing these consequences, because they're not so big in Denmark this far. They are there, but it's not as big. But then I try to tell them all over the world we see climate change as it is, and it's actually quite bad, and it will be more than double in just a couple of years. So we have to do something very quickly. And that is very interesting when you start looking at the industry. And actually, there's a lot of data on the industry, not the best data, but we can actually start measuring on all productions. And I tried just to gather some of the numbers that I found. And one of them is this. Of course, the American film industry is one of the biggest and also one of the worst when it comes to CO2 emission. Of course, they do some good productions, but when you look at the data behind their productions, you can see that an average American film has a CO2 emission of 500 tons CO2. And that's really actually quite a lot when you go into it. And that just to give it a context, that's 108 cars just standing running for a whole year. And if you look at the big productions that they have, like, for example, The Dark Knight that I found some data on, they had alone on gasoline, they had a budget for that for $500,000. And that was back when gasoline was a lot cheaper than it is today. So that is also a really big emission. And 900 people was flown around the world for 4 different locations. So that's just like moving a small city around the world with airplanes. And of course, the emission in these productions are a lot higher. So if you look at a blockbuster production, that's a production from America that has a budget above $50 million, then they have an emission of 3,000 to 4,000 tons of CO2, which is like 864 running cars a year. And I use this data a lot because people are not so aware of how much emission there actually is on film production. And that's the first discussion we always have to take. Does it make sense to start looking at the production when you're working in this field? And when you show this data and see how big the emission is on different productions, then I would say everyone thinks that it makes sense. I also just took this this example that I find a bit maybe funny, but also a bit sad. It's a film about the end of the world because of climate change, and they had looked upon their emission, and it was shown that they had 10,000 ton of CO2 emission during their production, which is crazy. What you have to think about is also who did the calculation on this production. And in this case, it was someone called Future Forest, who then received afterward 200,000 to compensate for the emission by planting trees. So that also maybe put some questions to the emission data, but I think it has been really, really high on this production as well. And this is a very often used way that you find out your emission and then you compensate for it. But actually that is, at least by Danish law, is what we call greenwashing. I don't know if it is like that all over the world, but what you have to do, and that's also something I'm going to talk about, is you have to look at the emission, and then first of all you have to reduce your emission, and then after that you can compensate, and that would be the correct way to do it. You can't just buy your way out of it. Just to give the very big picture on our industry, if you look at the culture industry in general, we belong to the ICT industry. And as an industry, we are responsible for 2 to 4% of the global emission, which is a big part, especially when you know that the airline industry, which is very, not very popular because of CO2 emission, they only emit 2 to 3% of the global emission. So actually, our industry, into this industry also goes streaming, for example. That's a big emitter, but our industry emits more than what they do in the airline industry, and that's not so much talked about all over the world. And maybe that's because it's the media that's included in this industry that should be reporting on it. I don't want to speculate in that, but it should maybe be there should be more attention be put into this. What is interesting is that when you look at the airline industry, I think one day they will have a big reduction because they will have a technological development where they can fly on Brent or maybe electricity, and that would really reduce their emission quite a lot. But that's not the case in our industry because it's so many small emitters on all our productions. So we can't expect that the technology will change it for us. But the good thing is that we can actually quite easily reduce our footprint, at least in film industry, easily with 50% on our productions, because you can right away start looking at all the small emitters and turn some buttons, and that will reduce your emission. I'm quite sure that the future is green for our industry. Right now, we see all over the world a lot of development, especially those buying film and TV programs are making more and more adjustments to what their producers has to do. For example, Netflix, who you all know is a very big platform. They have a target of reducing their emission by 45%, which is actually quite a lot. And they now have they're testing ways of reducing in the American market, where they have things that their production companies has to do or has to reduce on each production. So that's really interesting. And the thought is, of course, that they will transfer into international productions for Netflix as well when they've tested that. If you look at, for example, BBC, they have this initiative called Albert they had for many years, where they are calculating their emission on every production. And from 2022, it has been now what do you call it? Every production for BBC has to show what the emission was in the production. And that's usually the first step on also giving some demands on what you should do different on next production, so you can start lowering the emission. So BBC is one of the front runners. And also there's initiatives like BBC, many places. In Denmark, which is the industry I know the best, we have been really, really slow compared with most other countries, which is strange to me, because usually we are a country that actually have a lot of wind energy and stuff like this. but in our culture industry, we've been really slow compared with other countries. But the benefit of being slow is that you can learn from what everyone else has done. And I think we have done that in a way. And now there's been made a big alliance in Denmark from all the big platforms where they have given some guidelines to productions that they would like them to start producing after. And this handbook has been developed for the industry that's called BFTP, which means Sustainable Film and TV Production, where you can get a certification after an Italian standard called Green Film. That was published 1.5 years ago, about now. And the first year, there was not done any productions after these standards, and not even one was given the certificate, which was strange to me because it would give a lot of publicity to produce after these standards. So it didn't make sense that no one at least did the first production. But I think the reason was that it's so hard on big productions to change the way of producing, so no one really dared to challenge their production. We were then asked as a small production company by one of the biggest platforms in Denmark to try and help one production, or at least actually 3 big productions to lower their CO2 emission and get this certificate. And of course, that was a bit nerve-wracking for us because we had to start using all our things we tested on small productions on really big productions. But when it came down to it, it actually wasn't so hard. It was exactly the same things that we've done on our productions that could be done on bigger productions as well. And I just want to talk you through what we've done on the productions really quickly. And then also show you the case of the first production that we got green certification on. So the 3 biggest emitter on film production, film and TV productions is transport, energy, and consumption. That's when you make report, you can see that's always where the big emission is. And definitely transport is the biggest of those. So that's what you have to start looking at when you do a production. And what we did was we developed 5 green obstructions on each productions that has to be overhauled on every production. And the first one is I have to say I think these can be used on most cultural productions actually, but maybe you should be the judge of that. But on film and TV productions they work quite well, and also a lot of the work you have to do is that you have to inform the film crew and you have to inform the executives on different companies, and then it's really nice to have this easy list to explain from. And these 5 green obstructions has been a big help for us. So first of all, it's prioritizing the transport. So digital meeting, of course, during Corona, that became very easy to use, and we try to use that as much as possible. For example, instead of having people flown to a country, you can have live streaming from the location where you're filming. So a lot of people actually can follow that link instead of being there. But also just in pre-production and post-production, you have more digital meetings than walking, biking, public transport, electric vehicle transportation. Actually, this co-driving is also a big thing. You can save a lot of transportation by putting people in the same car. And you can also save a lot of time because you can have small meetings on the way to set. So you don't start by having a meeting when you get there. You put the right people in the right cars, and then you have some meetings before you get to location. So that has been a good development. Then we use climate-friendly equipment as much as possible. For example, instead of big diesel generators, we have now electrical generators, or at least hybrid generators with a big battery. That can run big lamps on productions, and that lowered the emission a lot. We're reusing materials on productions as much as possible, or buying certified materials for production. Then we have green energy as much as possible, trying to use the national energy mix for everything instead of using these diesel generators on productions. Having certificated electricity and also LED lamps on all productions. Then we now have local vegetarian food and beverages on productions, and we reuse the service and sorting all the garbage afterwards. And actually one of the big fights every time we make a production is this thing about vegetarian food. A lot of people have an issue with that. For some reason, especially in the light department, I found. But what we found is that we say as a rule of thumb, all the food will be vegetarian. If no one can live without meat, we can order meat for them, but they have to tell us. And that just changing the whole thing. Before you said that you wanted to, or who was vegetarian, and then you ordered specially for them. But now we are ordering default vegetarian, and then we can get chicken or fish for those who can't live without meat. And that actually takes care of that whole discussion. So that's a good, good rule of thumb that we do. And then we make a climate report on all our productions where we can see the CO2 emission that is left after we reduced as much as we can, and then we compensate for the footprint that is left to reduce for. And also this climate report is really important for us because that also gives us a roadmap on the next production where we can see, okay, we still had a high emission on this part of the production. What can we do there next time? So that's really important. Okay, so we were asked these three, I don't know if you know these productions, but X Factor is quite much around the world, very well known. Vild Med Dans is sort of Dancing with the Stars, and Godmorgen Danmark is a morning and evening TV in Denmark, which is three of the biggest TV programs that there is in Denmark. And the big question is also always where to start. And there we developed this process. I'm talking a little bit quick because I have a lot of things to go through. I hope you can forgive me. We developed this process that really worked well in big companies, I think. First of all, we thought it was really important that you made a united decision with the executives and the A functions on the film set. So we had all of them on a big brief and a big meeting where we showed them, okay, our productions have a big emission and what should we do to reduce it, and these things we can do. And we got all of them on board and supporting the whole concept of producing more green. And that's really important because on big sets, if you have just some of the leaders going and complaining a bit about it's being vegetarian food or all the plastic bottles are removed or stuff like that, that sort of trickles down the whole production. So it was really important to get all of the A functions on board. And luckily so far they've been working with us and it hasn't been a problem. Then we always make a sustainability plan on a specific project. That's just taking the different areas, for example, transport, and then we make 5 steps on what are we going to do on transport, what are we going to do waste management, what are we going to do with energy. And we have this whole sustainability plan that we also show to the A functions, and we also show to all the different crew members that this is going to be implemented on the production. Then we had workshops with the crew, lighting, scenography, props, all the different areas where we bring 3 things to each area and say, these 3 things we would like you to implement in your area of expertise. Is that possible? And then we had a very, very good discussion with them. Sometimes they actually gave us some inputs that was even better than what we suggested, and then we did that instead. So that was very important that we listened to all the people who has to carry out the implementations that we gave them. So that's really, that exactly the people, the different crew that is doing the difference. So it's very important getting them on board. And that worked out quite well. And I think this bringing just 3 things to them is a lot better than bringing a whole long list with 10 easy implementable. Then we have a green manager on set who has sort of the overall responsibility to see everything is upheld. And then we made a climate report and made an evaluation at the end where we also showed them on next production, you can make these 3 implementation and reduce even more. So that has been a really good process. And just 2 months ago, we got the very first production crew that got a green film certificate. I wasn't quick enough to get a photo of it, but my partner got a photo of it down here. It's not really been, I was a little bit surprised that it wasn't shown bigger because it's been a big job actually to change a huge production. But afterwards they went out in the media and got a lot more attention on it. And there's actually been a really, really good case in the Danish film and TV industry because now production companies know that it's doable on big production, and a lot of people are calling us now to see if we can help them on other productions. So it has been rings in the water that's really developed the whole industry. I just want to show you, as Nadia just told you, I'm the country manager of Green Producers Club, which has a carbon calculator tool that is really, really nice, very easy to use. And we use this climate report a lot. So Vilma-Dans 2022 was the production on the left-hand side on your screen, was when we put in all the data from production, we could see that we had a total emission of 9.4 ton, and that food and beverages was what emitted the most, and transport secondly emitted the second most. Then we also made a plan where we removed all the green initiatives that we've done. So that's a conventional production. And we could see that we actually reduced our emission by 41%. So that was really nice. And what it also showed us was that when we look at the data behind it, we could see that food and beverages was the highest emitter, which is very nice because that is easy to change or to lower your emission on. So that gave us a roadmap where we could see if we remove all red meat servings on our next production and just change one car with an electrical vehicle, we will actually have a 55% reduction on the production. So that gives a roadmap for the next production, which is really nice. Yeah, so this was sort of the conclusion we could present afterwards. That has just broken in the Danish media, and now I think a lot of other productions are going to do something similar. So it's been a good case. I just went through the conclusion actually on the earlier slide, so I don't want to do that again. Yeah. So that was just to try to give you a case and the development in Denmark in the film industry. I'm interested to hear if there would be questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for this fast course of green filmmaking.
Yeah.
Already, I think, have some questions from Jovana.
I just want to thank you, Iggy, for this very important and inspiring, but maybe more important insights for our professionals, because we were talking at the beginning, we were talking about the context. It is very important to understand in some contexts it is possible to give effort, but it is always hard, and really it is inspiring how you did a lot in the field of this let's say green transformation in general. For our film industry, we have also here as observers at the conference people from Film Culture Center of Serbia. So we share the important example how it's possible to implement some things. So I'm sure that we will stay in further collaboration and sharing thoughts about this. Just a reflection. I don't have a question. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's incredible to see how much it's actually been worked about around the world. It's really really great. And also, the film and TV industry is one of the places where you really can reduce a lot. So I think we have maybe a bigger responsibility than other parts of the cultural sector, to be honest. So it's great that you're working on it. I'm very happy about that. And also, it's so good to share the knowledge, because I mean, you can make a lot of mistakes. We made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, having too many electrical cars, for example, getting stuck in forests and stuff like that. And I think it's enough that one company makes all the mistakes. So good to share the knowledge.
Do we have any more questions? Maybe in chat? No. Okay. Thank you very much. You can stay with us if you have time. We will have one more presentation. Now, Jelena Knežević will tell us more about some of her practices. She is a PhD student of culture and media management, and she has a diverse background in the fields of culture management, and she currently holds a position of executive director of BITEF. So she will present how BITEF took a green turn last year as one of the first festivals in Serbia who did that. So here you go, Jelena.
Thanks, Nadia. Yes, Ukashin will help me with the presentation. Yes, I just want to say that Nadia also was the member of our team last year, so she was a crucial member for this green practice. Thank you for your invitation. I'm very glad that I can present our work at BITEF, but I am not sure that we actually have, that we should have the space at this conference, but we will see at the end. Yes, as Nadia mentioned, I will present last year BITEF edition, that was 15th BITEF, which was held under the slogan Edge of the Future. Maybe we can start with the new slide, yes. The focal point of that BITEF was environmental safety and sustainability. And from that year, BITEF strongly try to approach topics of sustainable development in order to promote examples of good practice using cultural content as a medium to implement changes. So I could say that we have started our green struggle with some success and a lot of failed. If I have to systematize all of our activities, I could say that we fight our battles on these two levels, on the level of content of artistic program and on the management level. We try to start with some green management. Next slide, please. Yes. The half of number, okay, I will now start with this first level with artistic program. The half number of the performances at the main program were about sustainable development. For some of them, that was just the content topic. Some of them even offering more sustainable forms. And for example, this year we had dance performance Traces by Wim van de Kebus, produced by Ultima Vez from Brussels. Also Slovenian performance Lungs directed by Žiga Divjak was selected. We have Farm Fatale by Philip Ken. I also want to mention performance Not the End of the World, produced by Xiao Bine from Berlin, directed by Katie Mitchell. We present it this year within the day of prologue. That is some kind of connection with previous edition. And that is good example because besides dealing with ecology, the performance displays ecological awareness in terms of the production, introducing and recommending new, maybe just utopian way of creating theater. And the costume and the props are taken from some of old production. Stage design is created from recyclable material, and the electricity for the show is produced during the performance by pedaling to a special bicycle, which was on the stage. So we have, all of us put a lot of efforts to discuss how to reduce footprint of presentation of that performance at BITEF, and that was a really exciting job because, you know, we discuss a lot about technical issue as well as about how they will travel from all parts of the world to the Belgrade. We can go to the next slide, please. Sustainable development was explored in the performances as well as through a number of educational and promotional programs and activities, which was the part of side program. At that festival, the main side program was a conference titled Sitting on a Branch, Solidarity or Collapse. And the main topics explore symptoms, causes, and the consequences of ecological crisis and climate change, as well as its social, economical, and political framework. And we have the experts from all fields, from arts, science, journalism, activism, etc. And for me personally, the most interesting session was the one who was about the growth, the concept of the growth, and so how they really changed my way of thinking and life. And I realized in that moment that actually we should be less productive than we are at this moment if we want to make some changes. And also, please, next slide. Yes. As a part of SIDE program, we had 2 workshops. The first examined the possibility of sustainability in theaters, and it was for the theater managers, technical directors, setup and costume designer, as well for other operational staff from theater. And it was led by people from Green Art Incubator, Vladimir, Jovana, and Ksenia. And the second workshop explored the way that theater festivals and other cultural manifestation or events can reduce their ecological footprint and shift the paradigm towards a framework of degrowth. And this workshop was led by Milja and Peđa Momčilović. Also, yes, we can go on the next slide. Yes, we finished with the main and side program, and also we have a lot of additional activities at festival. And in the scope of promotional activities, several eco initiatives were organized. For example, BITEF team, together with journalists and audience, participate in trash collection and sorting the waste at Fruška Gora, and that was actually our press conference. We didn't do the classical press conference. Also, we produce a series of educational video highlighting best practices from our private life. And also we organize a picnic with Kišobran, the organization who share with us a similar emphasis of sustainability. Next slide, please, Kasia. Beside this program and performances, BITEF also made some operational changes to reflect commitment to those very issues. And for me, I think that is the most important part. That year we publish on our website something which we call eco policy or eco business policy. And that is a sustainability initiative that highlights the change in BITEF's operational and festival organization. And at the next 2 slides, we can see what we publish on our website, actually. That was our wish to move from words to deeds. And I can mention some of things. It is very, it is not so ambitious. It is, we sit down and agree about some basic things which we can really done. For example, we put a lot of efforts to reduce printing material. And BITEF used to have a luxury publication, and then we reduce the number of pages and number of copies. Also, we do it as a black-white edition. We try to use paper with eco label. Also, maybe we can also go on the next slide. Yeah. Also, we try to reduce the plastic and to have a station for waste storage. But if you see, what we write down, all of that sentence start with, we try, we support, we encourage, which actually is just show that it is our, it is a mandatory, and it is just the beginning of our ambitions. Yes, when I started thinking about this presentation, I was afraid that actually I don't have anything to present. So I think that we, we do our homework excellent. We cover all segments of the festival. We somehow connect the main program, side program, and promotional activities with some change in our management. But it is still just basic things, just some baby steps. And I think that we should start with that. Now I try to be criticized towards BITEF. I think that we should start with that many years ago, 10 years ago. And also, I'm not sure that now we have a time for that baby steps. You know, if we see all data which Vladimir showed us, I think that we need to be more agile about all of these things. And also, I realized that when we are in some crisis moments or in some tricky situation, we give up on green practice very easily, actually. We always use money as some excuse to not have some green practice in our work. But I'm also think that it's not good excuse, you know, because if we have in mind that the growth concept, it is obviously that we should have one performance less, for example, and have time and energy and money to do things, you know, in a frame of green practice. Yes, so I think that this is the end. Yeah, so yes, I mentioned that. Maybe we can just switch on the last slide, which is go to the future. Yes, Nadia, I think that I said everything for today.
Yes, Jelena, thank you. I just wanted to add that it was hard in the moment last year to took that kind of transformation because it was completely new to everyone. But it was a good practice to start that way of thinking. Yes, Jelena?
Yeah. We didn't mention, we didn't mention that actually BITEF Theatre is the public institution, you know, comparing with this independence initiative. And on one side, it is easier, you know, because we have, you know, infrastructure and budget, etc. And on the other side, you know, everything is complicated in the public institution, and, you know, you have a lot of people in the institution who are not, you know, on this line. So, yeah, sorry, Jelena.
I just want to, first of all, thank you for this presentation, but also to mention that from your perspective, maybe these were baby steps, and in the sense of the maybe production and working procedures it is, but for the wider community, because BITEF has a really long tradition, almost 70 years, and one of the biggest festivals in Europe, it is super important platform for positive changes and showing that some baby steps or other kind of steps are possible. So it was important to inspire all other organizations through the narrative and program, but also through the other activities and also production perspective, how we can think in this very complex festival metrics. So I think it is not something that we, of course you will criticize, but from our side it is super important example, and thank you for it. And yeah, Nadia, I'm leaving you the floor.
Do we have any more questions, maybe in chat, or someone wants to say something? Okay. Thank you very much, Jelena. Thank you to big thanks to all participants of this session. We will now have a 5-minute break until the next session. So we will see each other around noon and 20 minutes. So we can have our next session, Visual Arts in Framework of Climate Crisis. Thank you.